Millions of Americans who have sought higher education in hopes of a secure future find themselves now facing debt that they didn't fully understand when they signed the dotted line years ago. This podcast shares real student journeys, the surprises, the struggles, and the systems that are behind them. Our goal isn't to discourage education, but to shine a light on the reality, reduce the shame that so many people carry, and connect listeners with helpful resources along the way. My name is Malika Brewer, and this is Student Loans Are Broke. Today, we're joined by Professor Theresa DeFrancis. Theresa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So glad that you're here and excited to be able to talk about this with you today. So let's start from the beginning and just where are you from?
I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio, born and raised.
So did you plan, having been from Columbus, Ohio, plan to be in Ohio for your college education?
I thought I would be buried in Ohio. I went to school here and even taught at the high school where I graduated. And then I was getting antsy, so I thought, I bet it would be interesting to get my master's. So I took a 2-year sabbatical and did that, and I was having so much fun with my master's. I thought if a master's is fun, then a PhD must be a laugh riot. So I applied all over the United States, got accepted to 5 or 6 places, and one of the places was in New England. I always wanted to live in New England, and I'm like, I finally have my way out of Ohio. Nothing personal.
We will not take it personal here in Ohio. All right. So you had mentioned, I think that I've heard that you're first generation that was going to college.
Yes.
Is there anything around that you would want to talk about as far as with your decision to pursue?
Even just going to undergrad, I didn't know what to do or how to get there. I knew that I didn't want to go to Ohio State. My mom wanted me to go to Ohio State. She felt badly that she couldn't afford to help me in any way and looked around at other state colleges and just knew that it was, cost prohibitive. So I started at Ohio State and hated it immediately. Sorry, Buckeyes. And dropped out and saved money to go to Ohio Dominican, which is where many of the lay teachers who taught me in high school went. And I knew I wanted to be a high school English teacher, so I thought if the best teachers came from there, then that's the school for me. So I went there, and I like I said, I saved some money and was able to pay for a lot of it on my own, but ended up having to get loans for my undergrad.
Okay. So you touched on this a little bit as you were talking, but one of the questions I wanted to ask, and maybe you could expand a little on it, are the support that you had or that you felt in various ways, whether emotionally, financially, as you were going to pursue your higher education. What supports did you have?
For higher education, my family didn't know anything. They didn't have any language. They didn't know how to talk about it. My mom was excited that I was going away because she knew that I always wanted to go away to school, and she felt badly that she couldn't send me anywhere. So we both treated it as if I were 18 going away to school, even though I was almost 40 when I finally decided to literally go away to school. My wife and my daughter were extremely supportive of the move when I got accepted to the University of Rhode Island and said to them, hey, you guys want to live in Rhode Island for the next few years? They were very excited. So we packed up and moved there. I had already been teaching in Columbus for a number of years. I'd paid off my student loans for my undergrad, which was very simple. I think I expected to take 10 years to pay it off, and I paid it off in like 5 to 7 years. And so I went off to, first I went to Wright State, which is where I got my master's. And that was a fully funded endeavor, which is nice. But I still needed to take out some loans to pay for fees and things like that. So I did that for 2 years. And then when we moved to Rhode Island, we had to take out loans there for the 5 years that I was in grad school there.
Great. Okay. So could you tell me a little bit about your studies? Generally, when you were when you were back in school.
So I started out as, like you said, a high school English teacher. So that was my original study was English with secondary ed as a minor. Taught for 10 years, then went and got my master's with a sabbatical, and my master's degree is in American literature, and so I just continued on that avenue. And when I went to get my PhD, it was also in American literature. What was interesting is when I was looking for jobs, I had the opportunity to interview for a job in English education, and I didn't think I would get it because that's not where my education is. That's just where my experience was. But that's how I got from point A to point Massachusetts and ended up in Salem as English ed. So for the last 20 years, I've been an American lit and an English ed professor and teaching students how to become English teachers, which has been a delight.
So, Theresa, you had mentioned you shared about what you had studied and what that. So a little bit. Could you share a little bit about why you chose what you pursued in your studies?
Well, I'm old, and so back then, women really were teachers or nurses or mothers. And I never wanted to be a mother, and I can't do anything that has to do with the medical profession at all. But in all seriousness, I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was 5. I used to teach my brothers and sisters, and when I would finish kindergarten, I'd say to myself, I'll teach kindergarten. After first grade, I'll teach first grade, and then all the way through. And when I got to high school, I'm like, these are the people. This is my community. I need to be in this environment for the rest of my life. I absolutely adored teaching high school. I miss it still after all these years. There's nothing like the daily drama that happens, and it's not just girls who have the drama. It's love. I mean, every day
I have sons. I know the drama. Okay.
Every day there's something. Every second there's something, and I just loved watching them grow from freshmen to seniors, and I loved it when they would come back from college and come and share what they were doing. I just absolutely adored it. And I taught for 13 years before I decided to go and get my graduate degrees and move away from that. And because there's more freedom. So that's the reason I eventually just decided that my students always said that I forgot that they weren't college students. And I said, no, I'm quite aware of who you are. So I finally decided I would tip my toe in what it was like to be a college professor. And that's another world in and of itself that I absolutely love doing. So.
Nice. So we'll keep, as we go in that direction, let's go towards when you decided to get your PhD. That's what happened after that. What was the next thing in the...
So I did a little bit of... I worked a little bit, worked on weekends. We had the loans. My wife was also a student for a year. Fortunately, we didn't have to take out any loans for her. And then she had a job, so I had that. So I was able to keep the loans at a minimum. I just did what was allowed through the federal loan, which was $8,000 maximum. So I just did the max. And I finished the program in 5 years. And after that, I was an adjunct for a year. And since I didn't have a full-time job, you can get a deferral up to a certain amount of time. So I signed off on all of that. When you have student loan, then you have to do an exit interview with the financial aid department at whatever university you are in. So it asks you, how much do you want to pay back? It didn't have the option of nothing. So I had to go through and decide what I was comfortable paying back, since I had absolutely no idea where I was going to end up as a professor, because I was going to apply all over the country. I was in New England at the time, but I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know how much professors got paid. I mean, these are things, in hindsight, I should have done some research, but I didn't. I started grad school in 1998, so 2 years for my master's and then 5 years for my PhD. So I finished in 2005, and the last time I had been in school was in the 80s. I graduated with my undergrad in 85. So I'd been out of school and I'd only been teaching, and you can only know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I opted for the lowest repayment amount because I thought, well, I can handle that. And then as I get my job and figure out what's next financially, I'll just treat it like we always treated our mortgage and pay double or whatever to pay it down faster. So, I didn't think anything of it. And well, that's a lie, because actually my wife was not as diligent in paying back her undergrad student loan as I was, and that caused problems when we applied for our first mortgage, and she didn't qualify, so she had to get her sister to be a co-signer. So I knew it was important to pay off the loan, and as I said before, I was able to pay off my undergrad extremely easily, even though, again, audience, to give you an idea of how far back I go, my first job was my salary was $11,330, even though I said I wouldn't accept the job if it was under $12,000. So I was able to pay off a loan with not a high amount of money coming in. My wife was a religion teacher, so she didn't make any more than I did. She didn't default on hers, but because of she didn't pay things on time, and she just figured, it'll just come out in the wash. And when she figured out there was no such wash that existed, I learned from that, and I'm like, okay, I've got to do something that I can afford moving forward, since the what's next is a total unknown. So that's the reason I opted for the lowest payment plan.
Yeah, completely understandable. There is so much emotion that's wrapped up in so many of the things that we've already even talked about, and I want to go into that a little bit. But before that, if we can talk, I want to hit the numbers.
Sure.
We can talk about what the amount was that you had coming out that you were paying back, and then what you had set. You did what probably many people would do, to set an amount that you know could be affordable, not knowing what your salary would be. Could you share a bit about what the numbers looked like also?
So as my memory served, I know for sure I took out $16,000 for my master's, and I don't know if I took out 4 or 5 loans for my PhD. So it could be anywhere from $48,000 to $56,000 that I borrowed. I don't remember. The payment, the amount I paid monthly was $211.26. So that was my monthly payment. And originally you had, again, elderly, you had booklets and you signed it and tore it off and all that, like the olden day with car payments. You're too young for that. And then you got a break of cents if you did it by automatic withdrawal. So I switched to that. So that I never thought about it. It was just one of those things that just automatically happens. So it was a non-issue that I'm like, and one day it will be paid off. That kind of attitude.
Absolutely.
Yes, like death. It's going to happen one day, probably, but
don't
not
want to think
really.
about it. And you don't want to think about it.
Exactly.
Fair. So when you, and I don't know that we touched on this, but when you got out, when you first got your loans in graduate school,
right,
student loan forgiveness was not a
No, it was not. And because I went from one program to another, I didn't need to pay back the loans from my master's because I was still in an educational program. So that just carried over and I was able to consolidate that and all of that. But I graduated in 2005 and the forgiveness didn't start until 2007. But that was the initial date and you had to work for 10 years. So nobody was going to get anything until 2017. So I don't even know when I first heard about the forgiveness, because
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So at first, it's an interesting perspective to share going in, not having any thought that there could be that
absolutely
opportunity or option at a future point.
Yeah, nobody was coming around offering to pay off my mortgage, so I didn't. I just knew. I mean, the one thing I did know, they were very clear over the years. during the 21st century. The 20th century was kinder, but it was very clear that student loans had to be paid back. They were their own special entity. You couldn't do a bankruptcy around it. You couldn't do this, that, and the other. It was something that absolutely 100% was your responsibility, and you had to pay it back. So
Yes.
why would I even think that there would be such a thing?
Exactly. And like you said, so it was a few years into your program when that did come about, but you were not aware of it yet. And you're saying you're not quite sure. Is there a time frame that you think of generally of when you learned about?
So I got my full-time job in Salem in 2006. And the program started in 2007. So I wouldn't have been eligible for it until 2017. I know that I applied for the first time in 2019. So I probably heard about it, like I'm going to say 2010, 2012, and thought, oh, I'll have to remember that. And then when it came closer, I'm like, I'm almost done. I'm not going to worry about it. It's been more than 10 years, and I paid off my other one in less than 10 years. So I'm good. I'll let the needy take care of that program. I'm not going to step on any toes. So I ignored it and just absolutely forgot about it.
Well, and speaking of, so like when you say ignore or what's happening in these times, you had as your exit interview was 2005, right?
Right.
So between that time and when you're finding out about possibilities maybe around loan forgiveness, how often were you checking in on, because you'd set your payments, you knew that those were happening. How often would you?
Never. I didn't ever check. I would just get my things, the email reminders, paying this, because that was when I was paying it manually as opposed to having it automatically withdrawn. And I knew that with my taxes, that I had the interest, and I wrote that off, and that always made me happy. And I felt like I was rich and getting the money back. And so it wasn't hurting my feelings, so I wasn't going to do anything about it. So I never looked. I just figured it was getting paid down, and I was close to having it paid off.
Yeah. Well, and many of, I don't say us, for all of whom can relate to having student loans,
Right.
They wouldn't even have to ask this question, but I'm going to ask
Right.
it so you can say why. Why were you not checking it more frequently?
I didn't want to know. It's the same thing as when we used to say, if I die, and now we say when I die, because we don't want to know that. It's like ignoring that you need to retire. Have you set up a retirement? No. What do you think is going to happen? Magic will happen. So it was, I like to call that human nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and the important thing, you were making regular payments,
right.
and so you're doing what you're supposed to do. Did you need to look and upset yourself?
Exactly. That's very well said. And again, I had this great experience with my undergrad, being able to pay that all off, and with, like I said before, embarrassing amount of income. And so I just figured I'm making a lot more, and it's been almost double the time that I paid off this other. So this is just going to move along in that same nice, comfortable way. That was what my experience was.
Yeah, that it segues into the next question I was going to ask you, which is, when did you think, so if this just kept moving along, not stopping to see on the student loan forgiveness, when did you think that you would be done, and how did that compare when you got the...
I really thought in 2017, which would have been the time that I was eligible, I thought I probably have 2 to 5 years. And when I applied in 2019, the only reason I applied was because happy wife, happy life, no matter who you are. And she kept saying, you should apply. And I'm like, oh no, I'm sure I'm close. And so I must have checked either in 2018 or 2019. And I looked, I don't remember what the amount is now, but when I looked, I was stunned. I thought there was going to be like $6,000 or $7,000 left, and there was probably close to $30,000. And I'm like, I've been paying for 17 years. If I borrowed, 48, shouldn't this be lower than that? Even if I borrowed 56, shouldn't this be lower than that? And so that gave me pause. And I decided, my wife is right. I will apply for the forgiveness. So I filled out the paperwork in 2019 and had that all sent in.
Can you share a little bit about, I guess I can't imagine the feeling of, as we've talked about, you opened it, you hadn't looked, and this was exactly why. You're probably upset that you even looked. You're like, this is why I didn't look.
I wish I didn't know. When I looked, this is a gross amount of money. I mean, for other people, it may not be a gross amount of money, but for the two of us, my wife was still in teaching religion, so she was hardly making any money. My first, when I got the job at Salem State, I think my starting salary was $60,000, which still is that's not a lot of money. And that was in 2007, excuse me. And so I'm like, that's half my salary, right? I mean, that's half my salary. And I have a daughter, and she's going to college, and I want to live in a house, and I want to be able to retire, and I want to do all these things. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I mean, fortunately, we owned, but I'm like, we are really limited now on our options of what kind of life moving forward. So I thought, well, I'm glad that there's this thing then, that this loan forgiveness, because it's been over 10 years, because it would have been 12 years by then from when the program started. I'm like, okay, I didn't mean to be in a situation where I was eligible for this, but I meet all of the requirements. I'm going to apply for this because it is like a service. And I think, well, the federal government knows that this is service work and is giving us the benefit of the doubt. So absolutely, apply for it now. There's no reason to be ashamed of applying for help, especially when the amount is more than I thought, because I thought $30,000, I'm going to be paying this with my Social Security. I mean, because I started late. Mm-hmm. I went to by the time I graduated with my PhD, I was 45. And I knew I was probably going to teach at Salem until I was 65 or 70. And I'm like, at this rate, it's not going to be paid off when I leave my job. And then what am I going to do?
Right. Can I ask real quickly, when you talked about where many can relate to that fear and not looking, and then you did look, and yes, it was overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But now you're into a space of what you're talking about that's more of the empowering part, where it's like, okay, now I've gotten past the hard part, I've seen it, and now I can make some choices. And so now and what that.
And so I did. And then I got denied. And I'm like, well, people, you invited me.
You're like, it wasn't my idea.
Exactly. You knocked on my door. You invited me in, and then I tried to come in, and then you slammed the door in my face. I'm like, are you serious? And my wife is a Libra in every sense of the way. And so she's just nice and, everything will be fine. And I am a get angry and fight back or ignore it and say this is stupid and I'm never going to apply again and throw a hissy fit, which serves nobody. But I threw it anyway. And then I did some research and found out that the majority of people who were applying were getting turned down. And so I figured, okay, growing pains, right? 2017 would have been the first time that they were paying things out. This is 2019. They probably didn't pay out that much in 2017, so they're still working on getting things in order. But I did pout for a couple of years. And my wife said, do you want to apply again? And each year I'd say, no, there's no point. They said no. And she said, well, try again. And I'm like, no, they're just going to say no. Why should I waste the time and be aggravated again and be mad and know how much I have to pay back and then have them say, na, boo, boo, you really do have to, even though there's this wonderful thing here, you can't have it. Look, that doesn't sound like fun times for me. So Why would I do that? But I gave in and I applied again in probably 2021. And I got turned down again. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is just, I mean, what more do I have to do to show you that I've done all these things? So I started making phone calls then. And, the first couple of people you get, you've talked to people who are supposed to be in the customer service industry, and you think, maybe you need to get another job. So I got a number of those. They were nice enough, but they weren't helpful. Mm-hmm. And I called again, and I got this lovely woman, just absolutely lovely.
Now, and this is with your servicer.
Right.
So
right.
Can you share with the audience who your servicer?
I don't remember who it was then. It might have been AES. I know that it switched to MOHELA.
Mohela?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
They switch things.
Yeah.
It's like when you get a mortgage and then they sell it off to all these other people. In fact, in doing research to see if I could find stuff, none of those exist anymore. And I don't even exist. It acts as though I never applied. That's for later.
I was going to say,
I won't.
You'll hear about why later.
So I talked to this lovely woman. Can I move back? Because I did actually call after the 2019 to find out why I got turned down.
Okay, yes.
I forgot that I did that. And the person said, you have not paid back enough. And I said, there's nothing in this language that says there's an amount that has to be paid back. It says you need to have worked for 10 years in these particular jobs and then blah.
Yeah, and let me pause for a moment just to make sure everyone is with us with where we're at. So you are talking about now with the first time that you applied and what you found out why you were denied, and that it was turning out to be around the amount
exactly
set at the lowest.
Exactly. Okay. They said you need to pick another loan amount. You need to move up. You chose the lowest one, and there's not you haven't paid enough percentage or enough whatever. And she said, you certainly can do that and then pay for a year, and then we will take a look at it again. And I said, and then after that year, do I have to keep paying that if you say no, or do I get to go back to my first one if I can't afford this? She said, no, you would be locked in. And I said, well, I don't want to be locked into something that I can't pay for the rest of the time of the loan if you can't guarantee that in a year when I reapply that's going to happen. So I did not opt to change the amount I was paying.
So from that point, you continued as you were.
Exactly.
And then we are now fast forwarding to where it was 2 years later before the second time to apply.
Exactly. So I was petulant for 2 years. And then my wife kindly asked me to stop being petulant and to reapply. So I reapplied, and that's when I talked to the lovely person when I got turned down again. And she said, here's what you need to do. She said, apply again. They are so backlogged. They don't know what they're doing. They are saying no when they should be saying yes. You didn't hear this from me. I mean, the woman was like, I think she was hiding under her desk or something talking to me, one of those kinds of things. She was so helpful. She said, here's what's been going on. I know, I really feel like, she said, of course I can't guarantee it, but I really feel like if you applied one again that you would get it accepted. The very next day, I get an email saying that it's forgiven. And I'm like, you just said no on this day, and now you're saying yes the very next day. So
an emotional roller coaster.
It was an emotional roller coaster. And after 2 years of petulance, I was ready for another no and some more years. So when I got that second email so close to the first one, I thought, okay, this is a scam. So I did not believe it. There was nothing in me that thought that I didn't even tell my wife that I told her about the no. I figured if I'm going to be miserable, she can be miserable with me. The shared misery. It's one of the perks of being married, right? So I read this and I'm like, I don't believe this. And I just I couldn't even do any. I just stepped away from my computer. I have an office. My wife has an office in the house, and I'm like, this is. I don't even want to look. This is taunting me. I'm walking away from this because this is one of those scams, and AARP doesn't know about this yet. So maybe I'll have to contact them. So I walked away, and then, I was the angina that I was feeling. I'm like, okay, this is messing with my head. A no, I'm going to believe a no. The next day, yes, I would have believed a yes maybe 6 months later or a year later or something like that, but not this. And I'm like, I was trembling. I wanted to believe it, but I didn't trust it at all. So I just walked away, and I think the next day I went back, I logged into my account, and I'm looking around because there was this big thing. It's like you get the message, please log into your account for a letter from the federal government, and I'm like, I don't want to. I've gotten those every single year. So you check them thinking they're important, and it's all saying this is how much you paid. And I'm like, I don't want to know this stuff, so stop telling me. So I almost didn't look, but I knew that I was waiting for the yes or no for that first one. And then when I got the second day, I'm like, well, what else are they going to tell me? And I open it up, and it's almost like those emails you get where the fireworks go off, and it says, congratulations, your loan has been
Forgiven.
Right, forgiven. I'm like, the federal government is not going to send me a congratulations certificate. Come on, people. If you're going to do a scam, at least do one that the federal government,
more realistic.
Right? Exactly. Like,
I feel like a lot of the skepticism that you had in it was also because you'd had we're at, is it 19 years at this point or 20?
So if this was 2022, it was 17 years I was paying.
Okay, because I'm just thinking about the fact of your connection with anything having to do with student loans was never feeling positive across all that time. As it was for anything that you're paying back in a sense.
I wasn't feeling negative. I was just feeling resigned.
Fair.
It's just a necessary evil. Until that first time that I was told no. And then I was frustrated and worried and anxious and not very
optimistic on that.
Optimistic about the rest of my life, and what was I going to be able to? Was I ever going to be able to retire? I never told my mom. Because my mom was always about retirement. At the time she turned 65, the lectures that would begin, and she would tell us all this stuff, and I would just nod my head obediently. But I didn't tell her about the student loan.
Family expectations is a big piece around also for people's concerns about sharing things with their...
I didn't share it with her because I knew she would have felt terrible, because she would have felt guilty that she couldn't help me. It wouldn't have been anything about me. It wouldn't have been like, oh, Theresa, what were you thinking? How could you be so irresponsible? She would have done anything and everything in her power to try to help me. Not my dad. My dad still doesn't know what I'm doing or what I've done. God bless the man, but he's a dad. My mom would have moved to someplace smaller. She would have gathered money. She would have sent me, $5 every day or every week. And I did not want to put any of that on her at all.
Yeah.
So I kept that to myself. Kathy understood because of her experience. So she wasn't going to say anything to me about what was going on with the student loan, because she felt such embarrassment and shame for the way she handled hers and the fact that we almost didn't get a house and all of the rigmarole we had to go through for that. So I wasn't worried about her. I wasn't going to tell my mom. I just was worried about the kind of life that we could have. So getting this congratulations with balloons and it's been forgiven. I'm like, this is mean. you scammers, use your brilliance for good things. So the next day I kind of like went into my office, like my computer doesn't know I'm here yet, right? So just I'm going to sneak up on it and I'm going to just like open it a little bit and type my thing in and see, do I still have an account? And so when it came up, I'm like, okay, all right, this is what I expect. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to see, you still owe $23,000. So I open it up and it says 0. And I'm like it says 0. So I closed and I went in again. It said 0. So I did all of these other things. I'm like, I looked for my monthly payment. You have a monthly payment, 0. I'm looking for all these other things. Where's my tax thing that says how much do I have to do? And it was a small amount. And I'm like, no, it's usually this amount. And I'm like, well, that's because it's 0. And I'm like, no.
And you still couldn't
I didn't believe it. I didn't tell my wife. I did not believe it. I didn't believe it at all.
How long before it could really sink in? And what evidence did did you have to see?
It was a week. And I thought, okay, that's enough time in my mind for glitches, for a JK email to follow.
So cruel.
Right, I know.
Cruelty of that person.
For a wah email from the thing to say, JK, you still owe $23,000. So I wish I could remember, and I feel terrible that I don't. You would think that since this is such a monumental thing that happened, that I would remember exactly what other piece of information said 0,000, and I finally I really don't owe. Oh, I know what it was. I got an email that said, you will be refunded X amount of dollars because you overpaid. And I'm like, okay. This sounds good. They didn't say, give me your Social Security number, give me your tracking, right?
Yeah, you believed it wasn't a scam.
It said, we will repay you the same way that you paid us. If you paid by check, you will get a check. If you paid by automatic withdrawal, it will be automatically. And I'm like, that sounds real.
Yes.
And they reimbursed me over $10,000. So not only did they erase $23,000, but they realized that, in fact, I should have been accepted
the first time.
Right. And so they were paying back the amount that I overpaid. So it was an incredible boon. And this is good shaking now. Yeah. And this is good anxiety of
yes,
just suddenly there's this windfall of almost $35,000.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, even though I'll see the 10,000 of it. So
but after all that time of the fear of how will I do this? How will I pay this back? And now to be on the other side of that.
So I walk into Kathy's office and I said, I have something to tell you. I said, can you just stop whatever you're doing and look at me? Because I have something important to tell you. And she's like, oh my God, what's going on? And I said, my student loan has been forgiven. And we just both looked at each other and sat with it for a moment and we were tearing up. Wow. Because, there's money we don't have to shell out. And I said, but there's more. And she said, what do you mean? I said, we are getting money back. She said, what are you saying?
Then she probably wanted to wait and see if you were joking with her.
Yeah, exactly. So I just said, congratulations. And I didn't know. I said, we are getting money back because they were in error in not giving it to me the last time I applied for it. And so here's how they're paying us back.
I can only imagine the excitement.
I couldn't. She's like, the pennies worked. My wife is very superstitious. She's a superstitious Libra. And her mother always said, on New Year's Eve, you're supposed to put money on the windowsills. And we always did, and we never. But we had a friend that we were telling this about at Christmas, and she said, well, you should also put it over the threshold. And Kathy said, oh, I never thought about that. So 2021 was the first time, December 31st of 2021, Kathy put pennies above the threshold. And on February 3rd of 2022, we finally got to realize, thank you, Pearl, that's Kathy's mom. We finally got to realize the reward of this money being erased and coming back to us that we didn't need to spend before then.
I love that. That's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. And before we go any further there, I want to step back and ask you, before this happened, before knowing all of this and before the forgiveness of the loan forgiveness, when you think back to all this journey that you had been on, do you feel that you would have had, or would be regret around having pursued your higher education?
Oh, absolutely not. There's no,
at any point.
No. As I said, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Then I'm like, oh, I just want to be a professional student. And then I went to get my master's and I thought I would stop there. But so many people were so supportive of me and said, you're a natural for a PhD. I didn't think I had it in me, but I had so many people in my master's program who said, you have it in you. And my wife was 100%. She was telling me all the time, you're so smart. Yes, you can do this. And I loved those 7 years. I wouldn't do anything differently about that. And I love being a professor. And my job it's so great. Don't tell anybody that it's easier to be a professor than a high school teacher. Edit that out. I just absolutely, it's a gift. I'm very proud of myself. My mother was so proud. I mean, I can still see her. She came to my master's graduation, but she surprised me and flew out for my PhD because she was still in Columbus at the time, and she flew out. She and Kathy surprised me, and I can still see my mom, my wife, and my daughter sitting up in the stands, and it was kind of like the see no evil, hear no evil, but the different ways that they were crying, and just the one that looked like they were in pain, and the one that was just like such happy tears, and the other that's just sort of, and I have that picture, and that's worth all of it. It's worth all of it. So
beautiful. Well, let me ask you this as we get ready to conclude, and ask: getting through this entire process, there's so many lessons that can then be shared with someone of what you've learned at the end of it. I want to ask you, what lesson would you share when you think back to when we first started talking? We were talking about when you signed the dotted line.
Right.
What would you say to that version of you going in, from the lessons that you've learned now?
I think I would tell that person that it's all worth it, but to pay attention to any kind of loan relief, to just pay attention to what's next. Don't just assume that you're saddled with this. I wouldn't have known if other people didn't tell me. And thankfully they did. And thankfully that it was in place. And I know that there's been all kinds of things that have gone on with the different administrations and all that. But I feel because this is such an issue that there will always be some kind of student loan help that's out there, whether it's forgiveness or what have you. Be an advocate for yourself. You were already an advocate for yourself by choosing to go to school, whether it's undergrad, master's, whatever, but you advocated for yourself and you did this great thing for you.
Yes, and the idea of many that are choosing to go into public service.
Exactly.
Where they could go into a higher pay.
Exactly.
So get that time of service.
Right. You've done all of this for yourself and then you did it so you can help other people. Yeah. Don't look at this as a handout or I'm not a strong person. I don't deserve to do this. Absolutely not. Think of you are helping other people. here are people who are trying to help you as a thank you. So pursue all of that.
Yes.
And I wish we could erase shame in this country or in this world. I mean, I was ashamed. I did go on Facebook and I said, I got an email today that was the best email of my life. My student loan was forgiven. Suffice it to say, it was 5 figures. And then I talked about the pennies on the door. But I didn't tell anybody the amount.
Mm-hmm.
And in looking back and doing research to prepare for this podcast, I saw a year after another colleague of mine who has been a professor longer. She said, I'm writing to you because I remember your post on Facebook. My loan got forgiven today. She didn't tell me how much, but within 2 or 3 months after I posted on Facebook, a colleague called me up and said, do you have some time? And I said, of course, I always have time for you. And she said, you're the only one I'm telling because you shared. She said, my loan just got forgiven and it was for 6 figures. She goes, Theresa, it was $130,000.
Wow.
She said, I can't even believe I'm saying that out loud to somebody. And why are we ashamed? Why are we embarrassed that we borrowed money?
And then spend years in a job that may be paying
Exactly.
less to be able to give
I mean,
back.
I'm just now, I have been a teacher for over 30 years. I'm just now making 6 figures. I mean, that's obscene. That is obscene. And that's as a college professor. So it's not like I went in, I'll become a college professor because I'm sure they make 6 times more than I would have made as a high school teacher. No, we are not ranking in the box. So I'm not in it for that. I'm not in it for the money, but I'm also not in it, and I didn't borrow against it to be shackled with that. And now I know moving forward, I should proudly tell people, yeah, $23,000 was forgiven because this is how much I borrowed. This is how much I paid back. This is the service that I have given to the people of the North Shore of Massachusetts for now 22 years.
And you're right. The more that people speak up and are able to share, then the less shame that there may be.
Yes.
So I appreciate your willingness to talk with us
you.
today
Thank
and
you
being
so much
here
for inviting
today.
me to be here.
I'm going to say that if you are struggling with your own student loan journey, there's resources that can help. Check out www.studentloansarbroke.com for more, and you'll see that below on the screen. And that's again, studentloansarbroke.com. STUDENTLOANSAREBROKE, studentloansarbroke.com. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, reach out to us. You can send an email at connect@studentloansarbroke.com. We would love to hear from you and for you to have an opportunity to share your story, as Theresa has been kind enough to open up and share today. And remembering that the more that we share and the more that we have these conversations openly, the more we can address where there's some of that shame and stigma. So that's it for today's episode. Again, I'm Malika Brewer, and thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Boxland Media. Think big.